Hey, John here. Here's a lick of the day number 26. It's a Chromatic Mediants Arpeggio run. As usual, I'm going to play it once slowly and then break it down. And after the breakdown, I'm going to share some practice advice that you can use for this one and pretty much anything else that you're working on. We start here on the high E string on the 19th fret. Right, so chromatic medians is basically just a fancy name for chords that are kind of like musical neighbors. They're not too close, but they're not too far away. They sound interesting because they share some notes but are still different. So when you play these chords together, they create quite a unique sound. But there's, even though it might feel a bit jarring at times, it still feels logical, and that's because it's connected by we're moving in the same interval here. And also another thing that connects everything here is that the same bass note. We're gonna have a C note as the bass in the whole time. And the way that I wrote these out in the notation is triads with a bass note, basically. So you would have E major with C in the bass, D flat major with C in the bass, then you would have B flat major with C in the bass, and then finally you would have G with C in the bass. Because if we go down again in a minor third, we're going to end up where we started. So that's the basic theory behind it, but above all, it just sounds cool. And when you look at the scale diagrams in the tabs, I wrote out everything in the context of C. So for example, this first triad then, just an E major triad, but B note here is a major 7 in the context. E is the major third, and then G sharp is the sharp 5, which gives you that Star Wars kind of sound. So this is used a lot in film music. So you probably heard this in some context before. But it also makes for pretty cool and fun sounding guitar licks, I think. So another cool thing about this is it's very easy to learn, because once you know this first shape, it's going to repeat that moving down in minor thirds. And a good way to keep track of this is to look where your index finger is, because that's where your pink is going to be for the next shape. But we're getting a bit too far ahead of ourselves here. So the shape then goes like this: 19, 16 on the E string, 17 on the B string, 16 on the G string. And I play a sequence that consists of 8 notes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I start with an upstroke. So up, pull off, up, down, 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 up, pull off. And then we quickly shift to the next, because since they're connected like that, we're going to double up on the last note of each arpeggio will be the first note of the next one. So that kind of a sound. But like I said, what's good here is that once you know this, it's the same thing. Just make sure that your pinky is where your index finger were. Do that again. And again. I don't want you to be confused here either. So the root note of each triad is this note in the middle. So we got E, D flat, B flat, G. After that, we're simply going to go down this C chromatic scale, using only our left hand. And I call it a C chromatic scale because you might be like, well, hang on, the chromatic scale, isn't that just every note? So why would it be stuck to a particular key? But in this case, music is context based, and in this case it's a C chromatic scale because we're starting on C, and basically you can hear all these notes in between as passing notes, because the C note is the one that's going to feel like home. So you couldn't just stop on any note here. That would sound weird, most likely. So, and this shape, if you don't know it already, it's just 4 notes per string, so very guitaristic. So we start on the 8th fret, the pinky, and this is basically the last note we're picking. And then we just go down like that. So 1 finger per fret. Then we need to move up 1 fret, because you get that half step. And then we do the same thing. Now between the G and B string, we don't need to do that because of the tuning. And then finally, here's where the next octave starts. So, whoops. So then we continue on like that. So the last octave is going to be, and then slide to the root note. And that gives us 2 octaves of a descending C chromatic scale. And if you have an issue with this, you shouldn't have an issue on each string because it's just 4 consecutive frets. Just look where your pinky should start. So in this case, it's going to be like a staircase there, and then a broken staircase. So, and now we're going to get, from this note, we're going to get this sort of staircase like that. So if you can keep track of that, it's going to be easier to know what you're doing. And when I play this with something called hammer-ons from nowhere, which means that I just start the next string with the pinky. You don't have to do that. You can, you pick it as well. So that's totally up to you, but that's the way that I did it. All right, so practice-wise here, this one is pretty cut and dry, really, because you practicing the same shape anyway. So just by playing this, you're basically working on the lick itself. If you want more practice, you can absolutely just go like that. One thing you can try besides that is to play it with another subdivision. So if you do this with 8th note triplets instead of 16th notes, you get this effect. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you get this displacement effect, and it feels kind of weird to do it, but it's really good because it can let you catch on if you do something weird in the transition, specifically when you get these displacements, because you're not used to hearing certain notes that pop up on the beat when you play 3 notes per beat as compared to 4 notes per beat. So it's going to move around more, and you're going to hear it better, basically. And it's trickier as well, and especially with sweep picking, that's kind of a tricky thing to keep in very solid time as it is. So, and if you do this, you're gonna notice that it will take you 3 complete arpeggios before you start over again on the first note of the pattern. So you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So it's when you come here that you're actually down on the beat again. So that's something to look out for. But that's also why this is so good to apply to different things when you're practicing. Because the more you need to focus on something, the more likely you are to have to go a bit slower and really take care of what you're doing. And you're way better off practicing like that. And see it as like coming up with these different problems for you to solve for each thing. So just take this rhythmic variation, do that, and when that feels solid, not necessarily super fast, but just solid, then you can try something else. Maybe try 5 notes per beat or something completely different. So basically use these kind of, I like to call them practice filters, where you basically you have something that you're practicing, but then you take something different from just playing the thing, and then filter the whole exercise or lick through it. And while doing that, you will basically see different problems that you might not see otherwise. And when you see those problems, it's easier to fix them. And by fixing those problems, your technique is going to get way better, way quicker. So don't get stuck with just repeating things over and over again. It's better for you to find different ways of approaching it, and it will make it for a more interesting practice session and just overall faster improvement.